How's everybody doing this evening? Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right, cool. So my name is Xavier Echon, and my journey began in March 2016 when I was a junior at St. Mary's College. And it all started off as just pain in my right leg. And I've always been an active person. I played basketball my whole life. I'm really into fitness. And if any of you out there are athletes or regular gym goers, you kind of understand the mindset of being okay with something being a little bit sore. And eventually that pain goes away, and that's exactly what I thought, but it just never did. So I saw a few doctors, and they all told me I had tendinitis. They gave me some painkillers, I took it, and everything was fine until the prescription of my painkillers ran out, and that's when my right knee just swelled up a lot to the point where I had to use crutches to get around. So my first thought was I tore my ACL or I tore my MCL. So I scheduled for an MRI, and because I have great planning, I scheduled it for the weekend before midterms week. So I go get the MRI, I go back to take my test, and the doctors call me and say, hey, we need you to come back, we need to talk about your scans. And I convinced them to let me come back the next day after my second test. And that night, my dad calls me and says, hey, you're coming home, happy things, forget about your test. And that was weird to me for two reasons. One, because I had a car on campus, so I could have drove home myself. And two, it was the first time I heard either of my parents say, forget about a test. So it was weird, I was worried. I went home, went to the doctor's office. Doctor comes in, looks me in the eye and says, Xavier, you have a tumor growing above your right knee. And at that point, everything just goes silent. Not because no one was saying anything, but because I just can't process what the doctor just told me. My parents are crying. All I hear from the doctor is words like chemotherapy, amputation, leaving school, and all the while I'm just sitting there thinking, like, this can't be right. I feel fine. There's no way that this doctor just told me I had cancer out of nowhere. But in a whirlwind of events, I leave school on medical leave, and I go into 8 months of chemotherapy. And in month 4, the doctors come back to me and say, hey, you have a choice. We can either do this crazy surgery and save your leg, or you can just amputate your leg. And I knew whatever decision I made at this point would change my entire life and would shape who I would be from that point on. And I feel like the doctors knew that too, so they gave me a whopping 24 hours to make the decision on what I wanted to do. So it was a lot of reflecting and praying and talking to everyone I cared about. And eventually, I made the decision to amputate my leg. They gave me the pros and cons, and I went through the surgery, it went well, and after a couple weeks, I went into my last 4 months of chemotherapy. Somewhere along the way, I get a prosthetic leg, so now I'm in this awkward situation of dealing with everything that comes with chemotherapy and trying to relearn how to walk again. And so I finished that 4 months of chemo, and not even a month after, they find a new spot in my right arm. So they go back into surgery, they take out the bone, they graft in a cadaver bone that put screws in my arm. They say, okay, we want to do 5 more months of chemo. And halfway through that chemo, they find a new spot in my left hip. So I go back into surgery, they put a screw in my hip. And at that point, I told myself and the doctors that I didn't want chemotherapy anymore, because after a year and a half of just straight chemotherapy, my body was tired, my immune system needed to recover, so I opted for a more experimental kind of treatment, which was just an injection once every month, and that was the summer of 2017. And to this day, I always call that summer just the golden summer, only because at that point, I got to do everything that I missed out on for a whole year and a half. I got to go out with my friends whenever I wanted. I got to learn how to drive again with my left foot. My hair grew back. I got to get a gym membership again. And probably the most important out of all those things was I registered for my senior year after just a year and a half of being away. And school in general, I was both nervous and excited to go back. Nervous because, this is my first time coming back from like this crazy event. I now have a fake leg. And I didn't know how the world would accept me again, because the world didn't stop for me because I left school. The world kept moving, and I didn't know how I would fit into all of that after everything I've been through. And I was also nervous because the friends that I came in with my freshman year had graduated the year I was gone, and it's not like I didn't have friends. It just felt different not having that group that you came in with and did everything with. But at the same time, I was so excited because this was the day I waited for and prayed for every night in the hospital, every day at home when I was feeling sick, was just to come back to school and prove to myself and everybody else that I could still do everything that I planned to do. It turns out when you have handicap parking, getting around a college campus is extremely easy. And long story short, I graduated this past May 2018. And, not a completely happy story. Twice during the school year, I did find new spots. They found spots at both sides of my hip, a little bit in my right shoulder, and a little bit in my back. And it was different this time because this was the first time I said, the doctors and me all decided we weren't going to do surgery. Because if we did, I wouldn't be able to walk at all. And I gave up so much just to walk again that it eventually, if you know someone's going through cancer, you went through cancer, eventually there comes a point where you're like, I'm done giving things to cancer, and you stand up to it. And that was my point right there where they said, if we do it, you won't be able to walk. And I said, no, I'll find a different way. I can't give up walking, that's just what I am. So I get radiation, and radiation's a lot different from chemotherapy, and it goes well, and that kind of brings us to today. And that is kind of a crazy story, and I kind of just blitzed through it, but I kind of want to get to the second half really quickly, which is the more important part, which is where I give what I think is just personal insight or life advice, if you will. And I know that sounds pretty strange because I'm only 23, and it's strange to take advice from someone who probably has little life experience, but I think of what I've been through, and I think I understand kind of the trials and tribulations of life and how to navigate through really tough things that happen to you. And the first thing that I always say is what you can control and persistence. So when I got diagnosed the third time, a nurse practitioner named Megan, she became one of my best friends in the hospital, and she told me that if you broke it down into numbers, I control 10% of what happens during this whole journey. And that 10% includes if I'm eating, drinking water, taking my meds, resting, and doing things that make me mentally happy. And the other 90% of that is just whether or not medicine works. And I have no control over that. And up until that point, I desperately tried to control everything that happened. And I just remember being so angry at just everything, just myself, my family, my friends, the doctors. I was angry at God because nothing was going right. I was trying to make something happen that I just had no control in. And I think a lot of times in life, we all come across something that we just desperately want to control ourselves, but we just can't. And I just want to tell you guys that it's hard to want to control something. I know that you want to. We're people, we make that mistake thinking we control everything that happens to us, but it's just not true. And I just want to tell you to focus on what you can control because it makes you a lot happier because we see progress. And I know a lot of you can say, well, I put all this work into some problem and I never see progress. It sometimes feels like I'm taking steps backwards, and I totally understand that. And I totally feel that too. But I like to use the story. There are people in this world, and they're called stonecutters. And as the name implies, they cut stone for a living. And so a stonecutter will have a stone in front of him and hammer at it 100 times. And that stone will look exactly the same, unchanged. It looks exactly the same as before he started hammering. But on the 101st strike, that stone will split in half. And the stonecutter knows that it's not just that 101st strike that split the stone, but all the strikes put together that split the stone into what it was. And I believe a lot of our problems are the same way. We hammer away at our problems all the time, and we may not see any progress, but it's so important to stay persistent because you never know when that breakthrough is going to happen, when your stone is going to split. So if I can tell you anything, it's to always be persistent. Do the little things because little things eventually add up in the long run. And the big second thing I like to talk about, probably the one I'm still working on myself, is I find myself in this really awkward situation where I'm not completely in the hospital and I'm not completely better either. So it almost feels like there's almost two Xaviers. There's one that has to deal with all the medical stuff and the cancer, and there's one that's a 23-year-old, freshly graduated person who's looking for a job to build his future. And it's hard to balance those two different things. And what that leads me to do is I start to overthink and spiral, and it becomes really dangerous and dark because I sit there and think, what if I don't get better? What if no one hires me because of who I am? What if I can't do things that I say I can do? What if I can't afford to keep getting this treatment? And you can see how it gets really dark and it gets really dangerous and it gets really sad. And I believe a lot of us, and I'm not saying it's wrong to worry. I'm just saying that I think it's least beneficial to worry and not try to do something about it. It's better to try to find something you can do than to sit there and wallow and feel sorry for yourself because the world's not going to stop for you. And I know that sounds so blunt, but it's true. Like, whatever you do, just don't spiral out of control. Don't think what if, because it's cliche to say, but this is all we get right here. This one life is it. There's no do-overs, there's no restarts, there's no retries, there's no rewinds. So, I know life isn't fair, and nowhere does it say that life has to be. In fact, life being unfair is the most fair thing there is about life. That we're subject to anything. We're not immune to anything. So if this is the one life we get, why wallow on things that might not even happen, things that are what ifs? Why not just, live as hard as we can, work as hard as we can, and love as hard as we can while we're still here? And so that kind of brings me to the last point. I know I'm going fast, but I know you guys have been here for a while, so I kind of want to I just want to get everything out for you guys. And the last thing is, this is my second Relay for Life. I've had the pleasure of talking it. I actually like talking at Relay for Life a lot because I like the whole concept of a relay. We all say life isn't a sprint, because if we sprint through life, we burn out, we miss out on things, we're not as happy as we would be. So we say, okay, life is a marathon. And that makes sense. We pace ourselves so we have enough energy to overcome the obstacles and also enjoy the good things when they come along. But I like the idea of a relay a lot more than that, because it implies that we can't run the race by ourselves. It implies that other people have to help us run the race. And I think life is much more like that than just running a marathon by yourself. And I know it sounds strange because, Western society, we live in the United States, which prides, do it yourself, lone wolf, just, self-made people. And I'll admit, there are people that become successful with a lot less help than other people, but it's hard for me to sit here or stand here and say that I believe in a self-made person, because I don't truly believe that someone does everything on their own. Because eventually, somewhere along the line, someone takes a chance to believe in you. Someone takes a chance to hire you, someone takes a chance to mentor you, to coach you, someone takes a chance to be your friend, and someone even takes a chance to love you. And lately, especially, it's been 2.5 years now that I've gone on this crazy, wild journey, and I always get, Xavier, you're so strong, I don't know how you do it, and the truth is, I could have never done any of this without anybody else. A lot of my strength is accumulation of everyone else believing in me. And if you guys really want to know what real strength is, all my friends, my friends, my best friend, they always said, we still think you're going to be great. And to say that to somebody who thought he wouldn't be great after what happened, that's a lot to hear. And that's all someone really needs to hear, that you still believe in them. And if you really want to know what, I'm sorry, I'm trying to keep it together. We're gonna make it. Don't worry, we're gonna make it through. And you want to know what real strength is? There are two people in the audience, and I get the privilege to call them mom and dad. And I don't know what it's like. I don't have kids, so I don't know what it's like to watch your kid make all these decisions, these crazy life-changing decisions, like this kid that you've raised and put all your hopes and dreams on. And just to sit there and watch, I don't know what that's like. So that's real strength, to just trust me and to make the right decisions when I know some of it was so hard, and I know you wish you could trade spots with me, but that's strength. And if you really, really want to know what strength is, okay, let's go. If you really want to know what strength is, there's a girl in the audience, and anyone in the world would be lucky if this girl loved them. And she chose the one-legged kid with cancer, And that's crazy. To know that someone still loves you, despite everything you've been through, when you thought that no one could love you after what you've been through. So long story short, accept help from people. Don't try to do it all on your own, because the truth is, as humans, we're better together, and we can accomplish so much more if we work together instead of doing it on our own. So thank you for letting me speak to you. I enjoy Relay for Life. I'm glad we can all come together and celebrate together, live together, fight together. I hope you have a great rest of your night. God bless. Thank you very much.